Hello, welcome to Books and Beyond, a show about that hopefully will showcase local artists, writers, quilters, knitters, anybody with a hidden talent that they'd like to share. My name is Jimmy Bennett, and I'll be your host. As a little background on myself, I'm a chef by trade. I've been working in the area for the last 42 years. I worked at the Fisherman, the Bootlegger, Seahorse, the Mohegan Sun Country Club. But a few years ago, I started writing, and I've written 2 books, one called The Case of the Flying Corpse, and the other Account of William Gillette, both set in and around Gillette's Castle at the turn of the 19th century. And I've also joined CAPA, which is the Southeast Connecticut Authors and Publishers Association, which was a big help to me. I just wanted to give a little background. This show is an offshoot of a show called Books and Things by Tom Santos. Tom had me on the show a couple of times. He was a very kind and courteous mentor. And he was very encouraging to me when I started to write. And he encouraged me to join CAPA. As a matter of fact, the first time I went to a CAPA meeting, it was up at the Best Western Hotel in Groton. And I pulled up out front and I got out and I was standing outside, a little nervous about going in because I hadn't written a book yet, but I wanted to. And I wasn't sure how I was going to be taken in or, how I'd be viewed by people that were already authors and publishers. And there's a man standing outside. He was dressed in jeans, a plaid shirt, and this black hat. And he asked me for a light. So I gave him a light, and we were standing there smoking. And I asked him if he was staying at the hotel. He said, no. And he said, are you? I said, no, actually, I came for this Connecticut Authors and Publishers meeting. I said, I came to see what it was all about. And he said, oh, really? Well, you should come on in and, check it out. I said, oh, do you know about it? He goes, well, yeah, a little bit. He goes, I'm the president. So, and ever since then, he made me feel welcome and happy. So, so I'm going to try to fill his shoes with this show and carry on the same work he did. And also, he left a void with the Southeastern Connecticut Authors and Publishers Association, which was filled by my 2 guests today, Patti Brooks and Richard LaPorta, who co-chair our chapter now. I'd like to introduce Patti. She's going to talk a little bit about her books and what she does with CAPA, and we'll take it from there. Patti?
Okay, well, thank you, Jim, for having us today. It's really nice to be here and talk about books and talk about how helpful CAPA is for everything. I found a publisher for a couple of my books, and that's Richard sitting next to me. I found him through CAPA. It's a good thing to have. I did my first book, Mountain Shadows, back in 2003. And then I did a series of horse mysteries. And very shortly, my latest book is a children's book. H is for horse, obviously, because horses are my passion. And that's where I am today. And I kind of am Richard's assistant as co-chair of CAPA, and we enjoy working with it, and we really enjoy seeing people who think that they would like to write a book to come see us and be part of our family.
I'd like to also, point out 3 things about Patti that I learned that I thought were fascinating. I forgot to mention early, Patti, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
But one is her father started the first theme park in America. And at 9 years old, she ran the pony rides.
Yes, I got 10 cents for a pony ride.
Second, which I thought was pretty incredible, was she actually jumped out of a birthday cake on a horse. So imagine the size of the birthday cake, and I thought that was incredible. And 2, she's been touched by the gods. She has actually been struck by lightning.
Yep.
And thankfully,
I'm still here.
Did fine.
May I add a 4th, Jim?
Yes, add a 4th.
She has been in a plane crash upside down
In the mountains
in the mountains.
on Halloween.
You want to tell us about that briefly?
Oh, my dad had a plane. I was 18. He was taking me home from college to our home in Lake Placid, and there was a storm. It took out our radios, and we accidentally crashed into the side of a mountain. Our plane's wing caught a branch, flipped it over, came upside down, and we landed upside down. And the first things my dad said was, "Oh, Patty, look what we did now. Mom's going to be mad at us. We're late for dinner." And we were fine. We covered up with what we could find, and we waited for daylight, and we ended up walking 10 miles out of the woods.
And Patty, you live on a horse farm too, right?
I do. I live on a horse farm in East Lyme. My husband and I raised Morgan horses. We raised them, trained them, showed them, sold them. Everything horse we did.
Wow.
And you have an award coming up with the Morgan Horse Association.
Well, I had an award. I mean, I was this year's Person of the Year for the horse organization, which was kind of nice.
Oh,
Yes.
congratulations.
Really nice.
Nice. And now I'd like to introduce Richard LaPorta, a publicist with the owner of Husky Trail Press,
Correct?
and soon to be an author.
I'm working on it.
All right.
You know, I tell everybody that they should have a book.
Right.
And that should, if I tell everybody that, shouldn't that include me as well?
Right.
Well, right now I do not have a book. What I have is I publish for other people. I have had the honor of publishing several books for Patti, as well as other members of CAPA, as well as a lot of additional people. I'd like to take a couple moments now and explain a little bit more about what CAPA is and what our goals are and where we're trying to go. Our main goal is to help people in Connecticut. These can be authors, publishers. We have mostly authors, but we do have several publishers as well. And in the writing process, in the author process, there's three main categories. You have to write the book, but once you write the book, then what do you do with it? So you have to then publish the book, and then the third thing is when you have the book published, then you want to sell it. You don't necessarily, a lot of people don't necessarily want to have big sales because they're selling for certain reasons. They could have it, for instance, for their families. I've had some authors who say, actually, I don't want my book out. What I'm trying to do is leave a legacy that can be passed on to my immediate family plus further generations. But if you are looking to sell your book, marketing is just as important as the writing part, and it's just as important as the publishing part. As a matter of fact, what happens is authors oftentimes spend an awful lot of time with the preparation of their book. There's a lot that goes into the actual writing. So once they finish the writing part, then they say, okay, what do I do now? In today's day and age, Jim, there's a lot of options. Options that were never even conceived of 25 years ago, and even in the last 5 years, there's an incredible amount of options. So if you're not in the business, what do you do? How do you get your books published? Lots of different options. But once they make it past that, they say, oh, boy, now I can just sit back and the checks are going to come in and I can think about where I'm going to spend all this money. Well, unless you're a celebrity, that doesn't happen. You have to have a marketing program. And the marketing program often takes more effort and time than the other two. And it's a little bit more frustrating at times because you think you have done it all. But then you have to go to that next step and say, okay, how does it go out? So at CAPA, we try and include all those things together. We have different sessions on writing, different sessions on the publishing part, different sections on the best ways to market and different marketing operations. So those are our key items that we do. But I believe there's a lot more that goes with working with CAPA and becoming a member of CAPA. And that includes, for instance, networking. You get to meet an awful lot of people. And they're not just authors and not just publishers, but illustrators, for instance. Suppose you have a children's book and you need illustrations, or you do a regular book. For instance, this book has a lot of illustrations in it. There's designers, because you need to have a good layout. You need to be able to differentiate your book, and the way you do that is with covers, layouts, and things that bring attention to your book.
I need to interrupt just a minute, Richard. because you're stepping over quickly about covers. I mean, the cover, don't forget, that's the first thing that a potential buyer gets to see is your cover. It's got to attract them somehow before they're going to go on for there. So covers are very, very important.
It's interesting the way, if you actually watched a person buy a book,
Yeah.
it's very interesting how they do it.
Yeah.
They first take a look at the cover.
Yep.
Then the next step is if they're not interested, the book goes down.
Yeah.
But if they're interested, the next thing they do is turn it around and look at the back. They look at what the write-up is. They look at the way it's set up.
Perhaps
and-
something about the author.
Yes,
Yeah.
to catch their mind, to
Yeah.
get them. Then, if they're interested, they do a couple things. Number one, oftentimes you'll see them just do this, just to look,
Yeah.
see what the
Yep.
book feels like, what it's like inside. And then the last thing they'll do is usually go to the table of contents.
Yep.
So that's when they get to this part, to the table of contents, that's when you have a really good chance to get the sale. However, if you do not have a good enough cover,
They're
you're not going to pass
Right.
that.
Yeah.
If you do not have the write-ups that you need,
enticing.
you're not going to get
Yeah.
them past that. And if you do not have a good book layout or a clear table of contents, you're going to lose them. So
Got it.
all of those steps are important.
Kind of shoots the whole don't judge a book by its cover right down, doesn't it? No, but it's true. It's like you say, yeah, I wouldn't judge a book by its cover, but I would judge whether or not I was going to pick it up and read it by the cover.
Go to the next step.
That's very true. So,
Another item that's important is the network. We briefly discussed because there's lots of different people in it.
Yep.
And also, what's really good about networks is mostly it's authors, because that's what the title is, but you talk to the authors about what's worked for them.
right.
The different people they use, the ideas that have worked.
And the ideas that haven't worked.
That's almost more
absolutely,
important.
absolutely.
Why spend
Yeah.
your time trying to figure it out when somebody else has?
Absolutely.
Well, one thing I've always been eternally grateful for to you, Richard, was I remember my first meeting. I was that guy. I thought, I'm going to write my book. I'm going to send it off to a publisher. And if they pick it up, well, then I'll just have to make time for the Today Show and Good Morning America and get out to California for the film rights and let's go, you know? And you stood up and you said, hey, it's just really not the way it happens, not in this day and age. And when you talk about celebrity things, sometimes I get jealous. You watch these people on morning shows and stuff, and they're whether people that wrote a children's book. Well, it's the greatest thing that ever. Hey, there's people out there. I know people that spend days and weeks and months and years working on these books. You know what I mean? But they don't have your name. So, which is part of what I want to do here. I want people to realize. I would like people, when you go to a local bookstore, you know what? Walk by the table with all the popular authors on it and stuff at first. Go to the local author section. You might see something that's very interesting, something that you can relate to in the area. And, it could be somebody you even know. I think that's it. I'm sorry to interrupt, Rich. Go ahead.
Oh,
Yeah.
please, anytime.
Yeah.
Those are great points. Another, and this is maybe a little bit under the radar, is when you go to a meeting, there's 3 different chapters. You're all part of the Authors and Publishers Association. You can go to any of these. It's all part of the fee. But there are 3 chapters. And each chapter meets once a month. But one of the things that's a little bit lower on the radar is motivation.
Right.
Because sometimes as authors, we go to a meeting and then we have the rest of our lives because there's only a very, very 1% of 1% of people actually make a living being
Right.
an author. So most of us have other lives. And it goes and maybe your interest wanes a little bit because sales maybe weren't too good that month or so. So what we try and do at our meetings is show some enthusiasm and show what can happen and encourage our authors to go that little extra and that it can be done.
Right. That's one thing I picked up too. Like I said, when I first went, I didn't have my book written. I was working on it. I was very, I didn't feel like I was worthy to be in a room with people that actually had books and wrote books and did books and stuff. And I'll be honest, I thought maybe they'd look down on me a little bit as, another wannabe. But, I stood up every meeting for a year and I said, yeah, I'm a wannabe. Yeah, I'm a wannabe. But, finally, I did get it done. And the feeling's incredible. We were talking about this earlier. When that book hits your doorstep and you open up that box and smell that box of new books and pull them out, you know what I mean? You want to look through every one of them.
For me, being a publisher, when I get the books that come in, the best part of the whole process is being able to give it to an author. Because there it is. There it is in print. It's ready to go. It's their work. It's a very exciting time.
Now, do you ever judge books before you publish them?
Yes.
So, is there times that when you might tell somebody, hey,
I have.
Okay.
I vet all the books because any book that I accept, I want to make it the best that it can be. So it has to fit in with what I do, with what my philosophy is.
That you're willing to put your name on, too.
Yes.
Because your name goes in that book as well.
Right.
That's a very good point.
Okay.
So before I accept anything, I always go through the manuscript. And I have to admit there were a couple books that I've actually had other people look at the manuscript. I thought they were good books, and I've gone through with several of them, but I had a question because maybe the topic was a little controversy, and I wanted to make sure that it was proper. So once I vet it and say it's something that I like and that I want to do, and as you said, I want to put my name on it, then I work with them to try and put out the best product possible.
One other point I'd like to make, as you said, that we network, we help each other, we encourage each other. I was just appalled, at times I've gone online to online book publishers and people that were willing to help you write your book and stuff. So I sent off one time, I'll never forget this, I don't really remember the name of the company or whatever, but they sent me back a quote for $14,000. For $14,000 that would help me design my book and put my book out. And I just, of course went back and did, if I had $14,000, I wouldn't be working, I'd be writing, So I said, no, thank you. That's just way too much.
Thanks.
And then they came back with a counteroffer and said, well, we really, really love your book, so we'll do it for $7,000.
Wow.
And, I thought to myself, I didn't do it. I don't have that kind of money to just, throw away and stuff. But I also talked to another woman one time whose husband wanted to do a sailing book with a lot of pictures and stuff. And she said she spent $24,000 and got 2 copies. So I'm not saying that they're all crooks or they're all wrong or they're all, but I just think that, that's preying on people's dreams. This is your dream, this is your hope, this is your, this is an ambition of yours. And yes, do your best you can to do it, but be careful where you spend your money,
Unfortunately, there are predatory people, like in any industry, and in our industry, the publishing. That's why, for me, actually publishing your book is a major category. Just as important as writing your book, just as important as marketing your book, because there are so many different options. And as you said, if you're not careful, if you don't know what it is, you can get easily sucked into something.
And then when I talked to people in CAPA, they were like, whoa, geez, don't do that, and it really, it made me, okay. And that was just one advantage I got out of CAPA, and like you say, there's just a lot of little things you don't understand in the marketing, which is, the other thing I realized, it's a lot tougher. I'm a little better about it, but I've done a few events here and there. I mean, some are going to be good, some are going to be bad. And pitching your book is another talent. It's another, getting people interested in your book while they're walking around a garlic fest or something, it takes a little doing, you know what I mean? But I've been surprised that I've done it with some of the other CAPA authors, and some of them are just champs.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I've seen them rope people in from 100 yards away and bring them in, and
Patty's pretty good at shows.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, you do. You have to, if you're in a situation where there's a lot of people, you have to be able to look at that person going by and say something. gee, that sweater looks awful heavy for a day like this, or aren't you cold in just a t-shirt, or gee, that ear of corn is taste as good as it looks, something to bring them over. And then the other one big trick that every author should know, if they come over and they start looking at your books, hand them the book. Make them pick up the book and put it in their hands. It's harder for them to put it down than not to buy it.
Right.
Yeah, that's a big one.
Right.
Jim, but what you're doing is you're trying different things. And that, to me, is part of the marketing process. You're trying different things. And oftentimes, if you go to a place and it's not quite what you're expecting, the sales aren't there, the people not there, whatever it is, hopefully you can get something out of it.
Yes.
Whether it's talking to other authors who are there, or a better way to present, or a better way to set up a booth or something, hopefully there's something that can be gained out of it.
That's what I've found. I mean, I used to joke. I was the streetwalker of authors. You know what I mean? I would, anywhere, anywhere, anytime. I said, oh yeah, and I still do, but now I have to, because I am employed full time too. And if I'm going to take time off from work, and lose that pay, then I want to try to make it at least worth something on the end of, on my writing end of things.
You'd like to sell one book anyway, right?
Yeah, you know what I mean? And then, that was always my goal whenever I put up a fee. I'm not big about putting up big fees for shows and stuff. I $20 or something, that's fine, but I always calculate in my head, well, how many books do I have to sell to make back at least what I put into it? And then, and including what I paid to publish, to print the book. So, that determines a lot more of what I do now. But, I encourage people too, when you're out and you're at these events and stuff, take the time. You know what I mean? Take the time to stop and talk to an author. Even if you don't buy a book now, or you don't want one now, hey, it might be down the road, somebody might mention to you, oh, I really like this genre. And their birthday's coming up, or Christmas, okay.
And also at local shows, they're local authors.
Right.
These are people from Connecticut. These are your
Right.
neighbors, your friends, who have taken the time and the effort to put something together.
Right.
So it's at least worth talking to them.
Well, I always got a kick out of the fact that whenever I told people I wrote a book, or they said, you write a book, they automatically assume cookbook. I mean, nobody's a chef.
Yes.
Nobody's a chef. It's not a cookbook. It's not about restaurants. It's not, it's not, no, it's a murder mystery set, in the early 1900s at Gillette Castle, and they get, whoa, so it's fun, that way and stuff. I've met some interesting people. I met last year at the Garlic Fest. I met Babe Ruth's granddaughter,
There you go.
and she's coming out with a book. She was supposed to come out with a book this spring, but I haven't seen it yet. Of course, they just sold one of his jerseys for $5.6 million, so she might be on vacation for a while. I don't know. But
Well, let me tell you real quick, because that's the way we opened, is I publish for other people, but I finally am going to publish for myself, because I believe everybody has a story. And this is a book about a World War I veteran. He was 18 years old, and he voluntarily went in to the Marines. And he went to France, and he was wounded, shot in the leg, returned home, and he became a beat cop in Manhattan, New York City, for his career. So I am using this because that person's very important to me. It's my grandfather.
oh,
And I'm using that as a story to try and encourage other people to find out about a member of their family or something and tell their story. My grandfather died when I was 14. And we have things from him, and he left us some money, which, by the way, is all gone, of course. And we have some of his artifacts. But I would really have enjoyed if he wrote a book, if he told about what his life was like then. He would never talk about, I do remember him quite clearly, some of the things that we have done. And as a matter of fact, he had always told me that he and I are going to take a drive along the Alcan Highway to Alaska. And I have been to Alaska 6 times, and the
Oh, wow.
reason I have gone back and the reason I have such fond memories of Alaska is my grandfather. But I would have really enjoyed if he had wrote a book and tell me about his times. What was it like growing up there? What was it like to be in the war, even if some of the things he didn't want to talk about? I've got letters that he wrote back to his family. So I encourage people to have an idea, whether it's their family memories or something, because everybody has a story to tell.
That's a really good point. I agree with you there. I, as a matter of fact, I myself, not for publication, but I've been jotting down stories that I've heard from my thing, because you have a nice oral history through your family, but if you don't write it down, I don't know if my kids will ever know it, or their children will ever know it. And I laugh sometimes, and I think you see a lot of people doing the ancestry DNA and the genealogy DNA and this stuff, but why don't you talk to your grandparents? Get them to tell you about what it was like where they grew up, what the world was like when they grew up.
The biggest thing I missed in my life, as you have gathered probably, I am a horse person. I lived with my grandmother when I was 15 and she was 85. She was born in 1864, long before cars, long before telephone, television, everything else. I sat down with dinner with her every single night, and we never once talked about horses.
Yep.
All what I missed by not getting into that.
Yep.
And by the way, she was born in 1864, before all of that, but she lived to see the man on the moon.
Wow.
Wow.
Look at this.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
And I enjoyed working with you on a book that you wrote about your dad.
Yep. Nice.
Yeah, that was the first theme park in America. Could you tell us a little bit about that, though?
Yes, it was 1949 that he opened it. It happened because I happened to mention something. My dad had a plane, as we know from before, and I was, at that particular time, I was probably like 7 years old, and he had just finished telling me a story for bedtime. And it was about a story about a little bear who had gone to see Santa, but he went by iceberg. And after he finished the story, I asked my dad, well, since you have a plane, can't we go see Santa Claus? And then I fell asleep. And he says that he felt that there must be thousands of people in the country asking their dads why can't we go see Santa Claus? So he built the North Pole.
Wow, that is great.
He was also part of getting the Olympics to Lake Placid.
Yes, we lived in Lake Placid, and he lived there since the 1920s, and he was quite instrumental in getting the first Olympics to Lake Placid.
Oh, that's great.
In
Well,
32.
we're going to have to wrap this up in a minute here. God, I wish we could go for another hour. We're going to I'll have you both back anytime, because I thank you very much for coming today and stuff.
Thank you. We enjoyed it.
Yes.
So, Southeast Connecticut chapter of Connecticut Authors and Publishers Association. We meet the third Monday of every month at the Groton Regency now. We encourage anybody that has anything to do with any type of writing, graphic design, publishing, our agents, anybody to please come. And come and see what we're all about, and find people of similar interest and people that maybe can help you get on your way.
And we don't ask you to join until you've come to 2 meetings.
Right, yeah, do a
to
couple
feel
meetings,
as us.
right. Okay. Well, I want to thank everybody. Thank you. I thought this came out to be a great premiere show.
Yes.
I would like to encourage everybody, please read, support your local authors, and please give your children a book. Let your children read. Have them something that's going to still be in their hands after the next post, so it doesn't disappear. And that's all for today. Thank you for tuning in to Books and Beyond. I'm Jimmy Bennett, your host, with my guests Richard LaPorta and Patti Brooks. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jim.